We keep going back, you won't be here.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, you're fading.
Go back to the future. It'll start to fade.
Hand starts disappearing.
But you'll get more vivid the more modern it gets.
Yeah. Well, welcome to the Evo podcast, and I've got James Taylor with me, Dickie Meaden, John
Hello.
Barker, the crew. And today's topic is, well, it's all about the 80s, isn't it? We've all been out driving some old 80s performance cars.
We certainly have.
Yeah.
Oh, what a great week. Yeah, brilliant, wasn't it? I'm still
It's so
smiling.
good. Yeah, yeah.
Still smiling.
You said it's the happiest we've all looked on a group test.
Yeah.
Constantly
Yeah, no
smiling.
moaning.
Yeah.
No phones trying to be connected to...
No lane keep assist
CarPlay.
to try and switch off.
No,
Yeah.
no, it's magic. We better say what we drove, hadn't we?
Yes.
Really?
Yeah.
What was it? You all look at me.
Yeah.
But you were there as well.
Yeah, I was there.
It was-
John's
it
got
was-
the list.
Yeah.
John's got the
Okay,
list.
so there was Toyota MR2 Mark 1, the 205 GTI 1.9, E30 M3 BMW, the 20-valve Audi Quattro, 911
Carrera.
Carrera.
3.2.
930
Yeah.
Gen, and a Testarossa.
Wow, yeah. Good
Just,
mix.
Some old duffer brought that along.
Yeah. And took it away again.
So what was the thought behind getting that group together? Just the highlights of the 80s, wasn't
We
it?
can blame Peter Tomlin for this. It's his brainchild. I think inspired by Taylor Swift's era's toy. So
I can't imagine Peter listening to Taylor
Wouldn't have had him down as a Swiftie, but there you go.
You don't know Peter very well, do you?
So this is the first instalment of a series. So we're beginning with the 1980s because Evo's roots are in Performance Car magazine, which was, you know, a towering tower of strength in the 80s, and we're going to go 90s, noughties, 10s, 20s. So we're going to look at some of the greatest cars of those decades, but not as rivals. They're all deliberately very different cars,
Yeah.
different genres.
And I think we tried to avoid some of the more extreme... I mean, there were fewer extreme models then, but I think we wanted to give, as you say, the variety and maybe some fresh cars that we haven't covered in previous features. So
Give some people who weren't even born in the 80s
Yeah.
Yes.
the opportunity
Yousuf.
Yeah, that's me. Yeah.
to see what it was like in black and white.
Yeah, exactly. So starting from the bottom, the cheapest, sort of most accessible car, 205 GTI. I've never driven one before. I absolutely loved that little car. It wasn't running perfectly, was it? There
No,
was
it
something-
just had a complete nut and bolt restoration. So
Yeah,
it was
absolutely
it
immaculate.
was absolutely pristine.
Yeah.
But the guys at Autorara had done like 130 miles, so they'd barely shaken it down. So we doubled the mileage it had done just getting it to Yorkshire where we ran it. But beautiful little car, very nostalgic. I'd never driven a standard one. I shared one with Roger Green, but we sprinted and hill climbed it, so it was lower and noisier and far less practical.
Yeah.
So this was the first time I'd actually driven a completely bog standard
Yeah.
factory car.
And probably a bit better than factory in terms of the
I think the
build
fit
and
and finish and paint
and the
quality
paintwork,
and it was pristine, wasn't it? But
yeah.
it's such a shock, isn't it? They're so small, and obviously everyone knows how they're beautiful, pretty little car, but just the interiors of everything, isn't it? The door cards are so thin. There's no dashboard.
And the windows
screen,
down by your elbow.
Yeah,
almost.
and the screen sort of feels like everything's really close, isn't it?
Yeah.
But so light and delicate and immediate, but modest at the same time. I think, given that was like the peak kind of hot hatch.
Yeah.
Oh, it's got 130 horsepower.
I was quite surprised because I know this one was slightly down on power, but you get in and it almost doesn't feel that hot, but it feels all in harmony kind of.
Yeah.
It's a small car, not loads of grip, it does roll around a bit and it engages you and you can just carry speed and momentum. It was a really fun thing.
Yeah, it works on the road, doesn't it? There's no normally whenever we go on those North York Moor roads, it's a really tough workout for the cars. Like most of them feel quite awkward and too stiff and bouncing around. I think everything we had on the test, it was just like they
Magic
resurfaced the road. It was uncanny, wasn't it?
Yeah,
I think we forget. It was really useful reset actually for me to kind of think back, because that era for me, I passed my driving test in 1988, so before I worked on, even when I had passed my test, I wasn't working on magazines. So those cars were the ones I was reading about in weeklies and monthlies. So to actually see them all parked there, all really good examples of the car, was freakish, actually.
James said it's like Car of the Year 1987 or something.
Yeah.
Stepping back,
Yeah.
What had you driven out of that list?
Yeah. All of them.
All of them. I wanted to say it, but I'd let you.
Well, my first job as a road tester was on motor back in January 87. So all of these cars were pretty much current at the time. And I think the issue, couple of issues before I joined, the cover story for both Autocar and Motor was the 205 1.9 GTI. Yeah, because there was a lot of parallel with Autocar and Motor at the time. Yeah. They were after the same things. So yeah, I got to drive pretty much everything that we had there when it was fresh and new. The 205 back then, you had Golf GTI, which had just gone 16 valve. So we'd had the 115 horsepower, 1.6 Peugeot, which was great. I ran a convertible. I ran a CTI for a few months, which was fantastic. Wobbly,
I was going to say, like a jelly, I should think.
Wobbly but wonderful. There's some great drives in that. And I remember that Turbo Technics built a 1.9 205 GTI turbo, which had 175 horsepower.
Wow.
Jeez.
Which was, gosh, that was so dangerous.
But
really, really
exciting.
Thrilling.
Rapid, I should think.
Was that too much for the car to handle?
Well, surprisingly not. Because we sent it back again, so it survived. It survived the test.
It's still straight.
Yeah, it survived the test. I mean, that's the thing about that car. It didn't actually feel that sort of tail happy, because they come with that reputation, don't they? Lift off oversteer. But up on those roads, I thought it was really
you can feel
nicely.
it just sort of start to wind itself into something, can't you? But you don't. There aren't many double direction changes, are there? Which is fine. So it just sort of settles and then takes a tighter line than you think round the corner, because the rear's steering it. But I think there's the one section on the way out, down off the moor again, isn't there, where it goes right up over a crest, left and right, and it's like just breathe over there and
circumspection never goes amiss.
But I like that. I think all of the cars, you forget, like in modern stuff, it feels absolutely indestructible for one, doesn't it? Everything is completely robust, and you don't really have to think about gear selection, or the clutches never feel weak and the brakes never feel weak, and so you don't really have to think that far ahead, because you know it will stop, you know it'll steer, or it's got some traction control or stability control. So in all of these cars, you're probably doing half the speed you would be in any ordinary contemporary car now, but you're thinking twice as far down the road, and I think that's why that combined with the fact that you actually have to think about operating the you're instantly kind of settled into them and much more acquainted with their individual quirks and flaws and personality, aren't you? I think that's important. You do, absolutely.
And I think there was one car with ABS, which was the Quattro. Which had a button to turn it off.
That's right. Yeah.
Interesting.
In case you took it on a rally stage.
But they're all on tiny wheels with chunky tyres, so you get great ride quality. You don't get much pin-sharp steering. That came much later in cars, didn't it?
But you feel them taking up the load, don't you? Almost as soon as you turn the wheel, you just have to tune yourself into different points of reference, and then they're talking to you all the time. That's the
thing. We've driven quicker cars on those roads, but not been entertained anymore. They really give you a load of feedback to work with, don't they?
So James, you kind of split the difference between me and these guys in terms of age.
I was born in the 80s, but I wasn't around for very long in it.
You're a late decade model year.
Had you driven any of these before?
Some of them briefly, I'd had a brief go in a Quattro before, but not to sort of the length of this test. and I'd had a very quick go in a 205 GTI before as well. But again, it was almost too short to really kind of fully get to know the car. So it was such a privilege to actually, put some proper miles in these cars. And
you'd reversed an E30.
I had, yeah, that's true. I'd learned the dogleg gearbox layouts in the E30 to reverse it into position for a photo for another magazine some years ago. Finally got to drive that car properly, and that was one of my favourite cars of the whole test. So it was the Ravaglia edition E30.
Yeah, so quite a late model, isn't it? They're 215 PS or something. So they're not.
Yeah.
Probably someone will correct me, but they're the most powerful of the 2.3s, aren't they? I think when they went Sport Evo, and that was 2.5 and 230 something. But it was a lovely car, wasn't it?
Yeah, really, really kind of well cared
No
for,
power at all, though.
No, it feels, because the M3 has turned into this sort of super powerful, super Celine, and this one, it was sort of grip and power are kind of perfectly matched.
And yet that engine had, so a lot of the cars you'd be at half throttle and think, right, I'm going to go now, and you put your foot on, absolutely nothing changed. The M3 had such a crisp throttle, and every sort of little increment of throttle got a different feel from the engine all the way
and the engine takes on a bit of an edge in the high revs.
So
almost like a VTEC, isn't it?
Almost, different note. And
that's felt absolutely tight as a drum, didn't it? That
really
car,
did. It felt like a modern car in a lot of ways.
The gear shift. The funny thing I was thinking before we did the test, there were some that I hadn't driven before, but of those that I had, I could remember the different kind of spring bias for each of the gear shifts. So the Audi I knew was going to be quite clunky and loose and not particularly nice, and the 205 would have that long, sort of like
really light,
up the wrong way around lever, and the spring bias in the M3 to get first.
Yeah, it's quite heavy,
then it just has such a brilliant snappy short throw with that little mushroom top gear lever. Like nowadays, gear shift is a gear shift, isn't it? Almost, it's everything's been finessed to try and feel like the optimum shift, whatever that might be. But you sort of found differences everywhere in all of those cars, didn't you?
The 205, the shift, sort of you waggle it.
It feels really vague and slack when you get in the car.
Yeah, it sort of feels like it's going to be crunchy, doesn't it?
Yeah, or it's going to be messy. But you get going, and the whole car seems to sharpen up, and you don't even think about it. You just
you sort of with your fingertips, don't you? It's really,
And I'd forgotten, we were talking about that car not running quite right, but they never did.
It was funny. I was listening to you youngsters, and you think I can remember the twist of the key in the barrel, and then it makes that particular kind of starter motor noise, and then it's like
spluttering and dying.
Oh, it's still they all do like that. And start it up again and give it some revs, and you just kind of warm it up a little bit, and then it
zing,
settles, and it's fine. Then you stall it again half an hour later.
But all the engine noise from that big XU engine is sort of way down the front of the car. There's nothing at the turbo, because I remember if you take the parcel shelf out, all you can hear in the back is there's absolutely no tailpipe noise whatsoever. But the car, like I say, it just snaps to attention. The other car with a long gear lever, which you think, this is going to be trouble. Back to the other side, because it was the 911, which is like a long stalk heading down into
that lever is because it was a G50 gearboxed car, so a later 80s 3.2, which is the same. Well, then went into 964 and sort of famous gearbox, isn't it? But it feels quite different in the later gen cars, because the gear lever seems different. It's not quite as long, and you seem to apply a different kind of leverage on the gate. But it's a lovely mechanical.
I like it. It's an event, isn't it? You feel like you're not just flicking your wrist; you're actually doing something. And
the weight of the shift, and the weight of the pedals, and the way the clutch bites, and everything. It's
all friendly, isn't it? And you can drive it.
I think the 911 was the easiest one. Like if you were in an awkward junction and you're holding it on the clutch to pull away. I think because all the cars were fuel injected, but they're all quite early fuel injection, and the BMW was really good. The Porsche was good. But the others were all a bit, we can get it running right
either
there, but we can't get the idle right.
It was
all kind of a bit of a learning period, wasn't it, for cars? I think.
Shunt and,
Yeah.
and all of that going on. But yeah, Harry's car was quite tricky. Should give Harry a name check, shouldn't we?
Yeah.
Harry
Yes.
Metcalf,
Yeah.
late of this parish.
Yeah.
He brought his Testarossa along, and that was really awkward to get going. He said he'd had everything rebuilt, and still nobody could figure out why.
Yeah. Still a bit awkward, isn't it?
Just there's a sort of a hole in the mapping where the car falls
It
down.
would just die on you, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
Unless you
Yeah.
keep the revs up when you're manoeuvring.
Yeah.
It would just,
Yeah.
you spent your life trying to...
Just as you get to the top of the bike point on the clutch,
Oh,
it
yeah.
suddenly
It makes you feel like a learner almost.
yeah,
doesn't
all
it?
these road testers.
Well, when I drove it, I was next to Harry, so I was being observed. and we were creeping along, and there was 2 cars in front of us, and Harry was like, "Oh no, we can't have our drive behind 2 tourists." He was like, "Overtake them." I was like, "Harry, are you sure?" And he was like, "Yep, leave it in third, flat out." And then the engine just sounds amazing.
It's epic, that
beautiful
engine, isn't it?
sound.
So
And
flexible.
it's so smooth, the delivery, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah,
It's really,
yeah.
really...
John and I were saying the step between, I think we'd both driven the M3, and then you get in the Testarossa.
Yeah.
And, you know, okay, so you'd get out of an M4 now, which is, 500 horsepower, and you get into Revo Alto and it's 1,000 horsepower. So it's double, but somehow the double between an E30 M3 and a Testarossa is like...
It's a bigger factor,
squared,
isn't it?
not doubled, and it's so much harder to, after that lovely flicky gear shift.
You really have to concentrate, don't
It
you?
like
on the
doesn't want to
drive?
let go of the gear, does it? And then it doesn't quite want to give you the next
And
one.
you end up looking down, don't you, at the gate to see if you've slipped into first by accident or like...
Worst nightmare.
Yeah,
but
yeah.
it does have propulsion, doesn't it? It just goes any revs and it gets more and more.
And the gear is quite tall as well, isn't it? So you have this lovely sort of...
Yeah, it's got that sort of
speed
super bike
building.
kind of long,
Yeah.
Big
long
sweep,
first gear,
yeah.
long second gear.
Yeah.
It's a lovely car
you could,
to drive.
You could
I
get
really
it
liked
up through the box really easy, but coming up to a corner with some speed and knowing that you need to make the right gear shift,
Yeah.
it all gets a bit...
Gives you something
Yeah.
to think about.
You start doing... It's like Steve McQueen.
Suddenly
You really get the gearbox.
3 or 4 feet in the pedal box.
I'm playing piano.
Yeah, but it does work. It does
Yeah,
work.
it
And
does.
that is classic. Yeah.
There's such a difference between low speed and high speed as well, isn't there? Because the Peugeot was power steering, wasn't it? And the
Yeah.
E30 was
Yes.
power
think it was,
steering, but
yeah.
the others
Yeah.
were non-assisted, and the Ferrari particularly, everything gets harder work at lower speed,
Yeah.
doesn't it? You're kind of
Yeah.
trying to find a gear and you're trying to steer it around the corner.
Try not to stall it.
But then as soon as you're doing like 30, 40 miles an
becomes
hour, it all
alive, doesn't it?
frees up, and
Yeah.
then it's a totally different character of car, isn't it?
Lovely 3-spoke, narrow
Yeah.
steering wheel as
Yeah.
well. Which,
Same as on an F40, I think Harry was
Yeah,
saying.
yeah, Harry said, same wheel as an F40. Really.
I think the most fun I had across the 2 days was when I was actually a passenger with you in the E30 and you were behind in the 911.
Oh,
And
on the drive back
Yeah,
to
it just
have
felt
the
like
car
a
back.
touring car race, didn't it? Just up in the
No,
revs
of
and
course
the
it
PM.
didn't.
Oh, yeah.
At 59 miles an hour.
59,
Yes.
yeah. And then everything came to a stop. But no, that was so much fun because I think that's it, isn't it? You don't have to be going crazy quick to feel like you're working
No.
the car and
No,
getting
you
something
feel
No,
from
we were all
it.
having a brilliant time, and absolutely no one knew about it. Did
Yeah,
they? It's
yeah,
not,
exactly.
It's not like you're going twice as fast as anyone
Yeah,
else.
yeah.
You
And there was a guy
barely-
in a McLaren that went past and he was having some fun and that made loads of noise every turning round and I'm like, probably having more fun than him in the 205.
And also the reactions you get from other people. They're all sort of cheery waves and sort of little nods and knowing smiles.
Yeah.
You don't feel antisocial in those
Yeah,
cars, do
the,
you?
the Carrera. I think partly because of the colour, wasn't it? It was cassis, so it's a really dusty, lovely, pale, pinky, purpley colour, which sounds horrendous, but it looks beautiful on that
great, yeah.
on that
Yeah.
car. I've not driven a car that's got so much positive,
Yeah.
gentle appreciation.
Yeah,
Just like
yeah,
get
yeah.
nods from like cyclists, motorcyclists, pedestrians,
Yeah.
other people with
Yeah,
in
yeah.
cars, people walking their dogs. They're all like,
Yeah.
Yeah.
which is a nice feeling because it's not a. None of them are particularly well. Ferrari's quite a show-off car, but the others aren't, are they? They're all quite modest
Yeah.
things
Yeah.
compared to their equivalents
Yeah.
now.
At the Quattro, I was driving it into Oundle, came around the corner, and there was a police car coming along with all the blues and twos on, and he wanted to cut across me, but I was already nearly on the junction.
Yeah.
And so I drove on, and he went Thumbs up. You're busy, mate. You just crack on. It's a house fire or something. Children upstairs burning.
That's the power of the Quattro. It can stop anyone in their tracks.
It is.
Yeah.
But we haven't yet mentioned properly the MR2. Which
That was a surprise.
I love that car.
Yeah.
Wicked.
I had driven it before. There was a long-term test car on motor. Mike Rutherford was running, and sadly, I think a tree fell on it in the Great Storm of '87. So that's what finished that off. And I did drive it quite a bit. And in fact, we did a series of tests called the Classic Alternative, where we put, in this instance, we put the MR2 up against Ferrari 308 GT4.
Right.
So that gave me my first Ferrari drive. But I'd forgotten, A, how soft it was, but B, how together, and blimey, you could carry speed. It felt like you were taking nothing out of the car just to flow down that road. It was so smooth.
I was quite wary of it because you think, well, it's a nearly 40-year-old mid-engine car.
And it's very soft, isn't it?
What's it going to be like? But it was, probably controversial opinion, but I think we all rave about the S1 Elise, but that's a much...
Careful now.
But it's a much harder car to drive, and I think if you got into that, which we'll find out, won't we, in the next group test, but I remember those, whenever I've driven them since, the steering is so light on those that it's very hard to find a point of connection with it, and the gear shift isn't great, it's quite stringy, and it's like the MR2 seems like a more advanced, more together, more refined, more completely engineered car
Very
to me.
polished thing.
It's so good. I can't remember. I think I'd probably got out of the Quattro, which has got quite a clunky gear shift, and it felt quite sort of heavy on its springs, and like Audi's used to do. And I got in the MR2, which I'd never driven one before. And the interior is amazing, isn't it? It's like the TARDIS. It's like a tiny little car.
It's like being in a glass house.
And the scuttle's down by your shins almost,
There's
isn't
no
it?
front of the car that you can see.
It's amazing, and it had... Oh man, this gear, this just like
So
a
With the weird
dry
lever,
run,
isn't it? The banana lever.
Gherkin.
but the engine's really free and revvy, and the gear shift's great, and the clutch is light, and the unassisted steering's nice and light, and rides really well, and it was so much fun. I loved that little car.
Somebody was saying, wasn't Roger Becker involved in the
I'm sure I read somewhere that
Do you know what? I looked into this actually because I did feel like the car just gave me Lotus vibes straight away because it's so supple and it's so light on its feet and everything. But apparently they used one as a benchmark for the Elan M100.
Okay.
But they didn't actually do any work
on
the MR2, which is a surprise because it feels so Lotus-like.
I was sure that I'd read somewhere that they were involved with it. But
Maybe
credit
to Toyota then.
It's just so fluid.
When they set their minds to something, holy moly.
They get it right.
Another interestingly, I wasn't on the test, but Motor did a test with the MR2 and two other cars which used exactly the same engine, but in different places. So there's AE86, the classic, and the Corolla, some sort of GTI hot hatch Corolla.
Right.
So same engine, front engine, front wheel drive, front engine, rear drive, and mid engine. And I think that engine, which is apparently a straight rip-off of the Ford BDA, works best in the MR2.
It was really perky, wasn't it? The throttle response was so crisp.
Sounded good.
But even without any torque, that is not a hindrance to making the car work or feel you're getting the best out of it. When driving the AT86, you need torque. Because you think you should be doing
all about that, isn't it? Yeah.
But it never does that.
Yeah, I don't know why. I know people that know the MR2 appreciate it, but it should have... I think it should have much more recognition.
It's a bit of a forgotten car
than it does. It's so good. It's so good.
It was. That was a real... Even for me, that was a surprise. I'd forgotten.
We have to go off with Aston and do stupid action shots. So
excuse me, you didn't have to.
Wow. I volunteered.
Explore the dynamics.
But again, from reading, I grew up reading magazines and obviously looking at the action shots, which when you look back at them now, they're all like a comedy body roll, aren't they? Little tyres tucked under the wheels, but driving them, they just feel exactly how each of those cars looks, don't they? They're very... You find out much more doing those photos in those cars because it's not just a case of switch everything off, go in slowly,
yeah.
honk on the throttle, and
You have to work
sort
them,
it
don't
out.
you, to
You
get them
have
to
to
do
carry
things.
speed,
Yeah.
so you have to know what the cars do, and then
Yeah.
you find out what their true like natural balance
Yeah.
is, and then whether you can work with that. Like with the 911, you can do things to make it, but that's just an extension of driving the 911. But they all had those little tricks that when you learn, you get so much more from them.
Yeah.
And work out what it must have been like to be a development engineer back then. No power steering, no stability control, no ABS. You've got these plump little tyres, you've got fixed dampers.
Yeah.
You know, you've got to work that.
Yeah.
It's got to be manageable at low speed. It's
Yeah.
got to be controllable, you know, at the limit as well. So it's a pretty good job to...
Yeah, there's no sticking
to bring
plasters
it-
you can apply.
Yeah.
No, you've got to bring it all
yeah.
together so that it all works.
Yeah.
And the
Yeah.
MR2 was...
Yeah, it's a really
Fantastic.
lovely little car.
Bringing things a bit back down to earth, the Quattro, I wasn't a huge fan of. I know you
quite
liked
liked
it.
it.
Yeah,
but
yeah.
I don't know what that says about me, but yeah.
But for me, it kind of felt like all the bad bits of an old car in terms of being quite vague and woolly
Yeah.
and not having control, but then actually not that much character. It's a wicked thing to look at and be in, but I thought there'd be more character from the engine and more sort of points of interaction.
I think-
Didn't actually have much feel either, which
No,
was...
I think Harry made a good point with the earlier 10-valve turbo made much more of a what you imagine or remember a Quattro noise to be.
Yeah.
Slightly fruitier, more musical note. I think the 20-valve was a bit gruff and doesn't really feel like it wants to rev particularly. It's like the turbo fault makes it kind of forces it to rev, but it's not inherently sweet engine. That it was great to have the car, and heritage fleets are really useful, but I think that car would benefit from dampers and track rod ends and that kind of thing. But fundamentally, I think that's, if you read back through old magazines, that's what that car made Audi's brand, but a lot of how it was is what it took them years to shake off, actually, isn't it? That slightly wooden damping and slightly nose steering, and they find, their Audis now are very different to those cars. So I'm not surprised you found it a bit disappointing.
Yeah.
After an MR2, driving the MR2, it feels like a very blunt instrument.
Yes, yeah.
And it kind of was. Even in rallying, it was a car you had to bully
manhandle
to make do what you
That's where it
want.
was all the Scandinavian drivers left foot braking, wasn't it?
Yeah, keep the boost up, and you almost have to, a little bit like the AE86, you have to go there to push it, to use what it's good at, which is fantastic corner exit traction, because it will come out of corners really, really well.
Yeah.
It's just a different experience, because it is an overhanging engine, so it's all about the front end, isn't it?
It is completely in front of the front axle, isn't it?
Yeah,
When you
when you
open
open the bonnet, it was
Yeah.
a real shock, actually.
Yeah.
'cause
The end of it is right up against the grill, isn't it? And the driving position, my God, it's like
It was like a broken armchair.
I don't know whether the you'd have to drive a left-hand drive car to see if it's any better, because I know the left-hand drive 911 driving position that we had was
better.
probably better than a right-hand drive car. But yeah, I think you can tell the Quattro came from an old platform, didn't it? So you kind of feel they've had to sort of hit it with a lump hammer on the floor to fit all these extra bits. So I'm not tall, and I got in the car and my head is almost touching the roof, and the steering wheel's over there, the pedals are over here, and the seat's somewhere in the middle, isn't it? It's like, well, what's this all
I
about?
think I remember you saying it's like the guy who designed the dashboard, designed the pedal box,
I
designed
don't
the seat,
think
didn't
they
talk
ever
to
met
each other.
or corresponded.
But I think
Well,
it's somewhere
here's-
near.
Hated each other.
Here's a seat. Oh, well, there's a steering wheel. Oh, what you put? Oh, the pedals are over there. Oh, you wanted them there.
You're putting the steering wheel on that side.
Yeah.
Yeah, it wasn't. Sadly, it wasn't the best example.
The Sport
But it's-
Quattro is what you think a Quattro is going to be.
Okay.
Because it's,
Different animal.
300 and it's over 300 horsepower.
Shorter wheelbase as well.
Shorter wheelbase, so it's a bit more agile, and it sounds angrier, and it's got some
Chattering wastegate.
proper
Yeah,
boost,
yeah.
and that, I think that's the old school Quattro you'd want to drive, because that would kind of make sense then. I think.
Yeah.
But when they, just to move back to the 911, it came while we were standing around in the car park. Somebody brought the 911 back in, and I thought, that's what Singer looked at and said, right, that's what we want it to look like. Just exaggerate
it up a little
everything.
Yeah.
And you
Refine
end
the
up,
details.
and you end up with, because I did actually drive something like that back in the day. It's another one of those classic alternatives. Was a Daihatsu Charade GT Ti.
Oh, nice, yeah.
Against the 911 because they sound similar. I remember the
This
guy
is
with the
podcast
911
bingo. John, as John mentioned biscuits.
Yeah.
Charade GT Ti.
We turned up to do this shoot with this guy from the Porsche Owners Club, I think it was, and he went, "Okay, yeah, enjoy yourself."
Yeah.
But that car, I can't remember what model that was, but that had that sort of jeopardy. There was that sense of jeopardy in that car, which you didn't get with the owners.
This one, I was speaking to the owner, Steve, who's the world's nicest and most accommodating reader, but he said it had been set up by centre gravity. So they'd done all the geo on it, which might account for why it felt so good.
Yeah.
And the only other 3.2 Carrera I'd driven was for an Evo feature a long time ago now. It might even have been when the 997 was new, but we got everything from a short wheelbase 911 through to whatever the newest gen car was, and we had a 3.2 Carrera there and a 964 and a 993 and so on. But the Carrera that I drove felt the steering was sort of heavier than that and a bit stodgy, and compared to the others it didn't inspire me in the same way, so I've kind of overlooked them since. But driving this one, God, it's really
So sweet.
It's so good.
For me, that was everything about it. It's 911 turned up to 11. It's exactly what you think it's going to be, and then a bit more.
Yeah,
so good dynamically. The way everything works together.
They're such brakes. Funny things to drive, though, aren't they? Because you first get in them and they're sort of doing their normal 911 nodding nose thing, and you turn the wheel and it moves, but there's a slight delay compared to a regular car.
And then it wakes up quite
but
often.
then it all, and you sort of learn how to just turn and lift the throttle a little bit, and then that kind of it's like you've got another set of controls. And you can then, for something that initially feels a little bit disconcerting, you can place it so accurately in a corner without even thinking about it.
It's so always been the way with the 911. Even when we did the M4 and Carrera test, the first few inputs to the steering on that Carrera, this isn't going to be very good. Into the corner, perfect.
You know exactly where you are with
it. Where you are with it. It's a brilliant trick.
Very cool car, and the power outputs were hilarious, weren't they? Apart from the Ferrari, nothing. Well, the Porsche, 230 odd horsepower, isn't it? The BMW 215, Audi just over 200, the Peugeot 130, and what would the MR2 be?
That's about 130.
Yeah, similar power, isn't it? So tiny,
just like a diesel Repmobile or something.
Yeah.
Same kind of performance.
Tiny performance, but appropriate to the car. I remember at one point you were in front in the 911. And I was looking and thinking, God, that car's tiny. And I was in the Peugeot. But in the Porsche, you can almost reach across to wind the window down. Without
you can unlock the door and do the window winder from the driver's seat.
It's so small, but it doesn't feel.
No, it doesn't feel
like
excessively small, though, does it? It doesn't feel
like an original Elan. You get in the Elan and you think, well, it's a comedy. It's a toy car, isn't it?
It's a crisp packet.
It's got it should have pedals at the bottom, but you get in it, and it's fine. It's all just what you need.
Yeah, I sort of was thinking, God, what would if you had to take one? Like the Ferrari's an obvious one because it's a 12-cylinder Ferrari, isn't it? And I do love the 911, but the M3 and the MR2. Well, but then you think, but actually the Peugeot is lovely.
Yeah, I know.
They're such a
nice problem to have.
Endearing group of cars, aren't they? And they're so different from one another. This is like maths.
You can make
to the max, isn't it? But you could probably, but you could genuinely have all of them, and there's no overlap really, is there, in terms of what they do or how they.
And I think that's not always the case with modern stuff, is it? I think because they're so old and mechanically simple, you feel the differences in how they've been designed and set up a lot more, and the ethos behind the car. So it's like the 205 you jump out of into the M3. It's not just like a bigger, mature, faster car. It's a completely different driving experience. The feel of everything, gear shift, steering, and the way you drive them is completely different.
I think it's interesting that the Toyota looked fairly well looked after. When
Yeah.
you
some very
got
good condition.
the bonnets and boots and things
Yeah.
on it. It looked very tidy. But has that had a proper rebuild? I suspect not.
It done 90,000 miles or
Yeah.
something, hasn't it?
And it felt, as I remember it, being brand new.
Yeah.
There's nothing about that car that suggests it's done that mileage.
Well, Porsche had done 500,000 miles.
I know. Genuinely
like
hard
it
to
does
get
zero.
most.
The most
Genuinely.
extraordinary story with the first owner, wasn't it? He had
Yeah.
business. He lived in Swiss-French border, and he had businesses in like Northern Europe, Southern Europe, and he was doing like 10,000 miles a month.
Yeah.
I think during the period he had it, I think it was having. Was it 2 services a month? There's a story about it, wasn't it?
Service every 6 weeks.
Yeah, service every 6 weeks.
Wow.
Wow.
Set tyres every 8.
Yeah, 52
Yeah,
sets of
that's
tyres it had
kidding.
while he owned it. And then sounds like it was a right old nail, doesn't it? But then it had a full,
Yeah.
like
The owner
150,000
mentioned it had loads of
euro
batteries as well. So it had
40
40
batteries.
batteries over its life.
That's because
no way.
Porsche don't make the batteries, do they?
Yeah, exactly. The only
But-
thing they don't make.
You're in it, and it's such a comfortable car, isn't it? It's such a
It is,
usable car.
yeah.
I think our perception of 911s, because we're generally in an RS or a GT3, or you kind of have this perception that they're impractical cars, but that was so comfortable with a velour seats and rear seats that you can actually just throw
Yes.
bags in rather than have to put stuff in the front.
Yeah.
Well, you two did loads of miles in it, didn't you? Something like 300 miles.
Yeah, we car shared our way over to Derby to pick up the 205.
Yeah,
from
and up to
Autorama.
Yorkshire, then round Yorkshire
Yeah.
for 2 days, and then drove it back.
Yeah.
And then I had a little drive in it this morning as well.
Little drive. Late coming in.
we noticed you were a bit late.
Exactly.
We're
Yeah.
wondering.
Explains everything.
He said he was leaving for the office over an hour
He
ago.
technically was, but just doing that.
And I got my car out and took a picture with it, and then I drove my car just to see what the difference was. Not this
Back to
morning,
back.
that isn't one, but last night. No, so it's a really, really special car. But they all are, aren't they?
Yeah, I
Great
do
bunch.
admire Harry for the mileage that he puts on his Testarossa.
Because he was going straight up to Scotland from
Absolutely.
the shoots.
Yeah, he'd done
And
1,000 miles
I imagine,
in a couple of
yeah.
days, hadn't he? By the
Yeah.
time he,
Once you get it on the motorway, it's all fantastic. But
Yeah.
to properly drive it is quite a physical.
Yeah, definitely.
well, he
Yeah.
drove that to Morocco, didn't he? That
Yeah,
car.
shortly after buying it, I think.
Yeah.
Straight to the Sahara.
Yeah,
I
Took
think
the
you
engine
could
out to
feel it in
clean
the
it.
car, actually. I know we said about it stalling and stuff, but I think they all do that, don't they? But generally, like the 911 as well, I'm sure cars have a bit of a muscle memory. Like the ones that get used just seem to work
Yeah, relish
well,
it.
and everything's got bedded in at
Yeah.
the same rate,
Yeah.
and they're just, you just want to keep driving them, I think.
yeah. What made me laugh about the Peugeot was that I was driving along thinking, if you just spent an awful lot of money on this restoration, there's a few squeaks and rattles, and you think, no. Come on, be real. That's how it was.
Yeah.
new.
Yeah, it's an
Yeah.
entirely
This is-
authentic Peugeot.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's probably
Yeah.
better than it was new.
It probably
Yeah.
is.
The
Yeah,
sunroof worked because it's got that funny rubber pump-up rubber seal, hasn't it?
Yeah, I didn't know what was going on there. I
Never
was just
used to
like,
work,
what's
but that works. But yeah, they were notoriously flaky cars when they were
But,
new.
I mean, that car looked as if it was riding a little bit high to me. They said that's how they all were, sir. But it drove perfectly.
Yeah.
It
Yeah,
was
it is.
such a good
Yeah,
car to
it drove
drive.
beautifully.
And when the driveline shunt, the rattles, that all vanishes
Yeah.
as soon as you get up to a little bit of pace.
Yeah.
And it was so good in the corner. It felt so settled
Yeah.
and so, on point.
Yeah.
It was beautiful.
Those roads are great up there anyway, aren't they? Because you get into a high gear and then you're just,
Yeah, you just
sort of
flow,
blending in and out of the
carrying
throttle and,
momentum.
and
Yeah.
going through the corners at a decent
Yeah,
speed.
60
But a
miles
car
an
that
hour.
won't work over the bumps is horrible up
Yeah,
there.
yeah.
But the Peugeot was one of the more settled cars of the
Yeah.
bunch, wasn't it?
I think the Testarossa is the only car that you actually just want to wind the engine up at
Yeah.
every opportunity.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's really addictive, isn't it? When
epic.
it gets
Yeah.
up to it really is.
Epic. And you could hear it coming for
Yeah.
Yeah,
miles.
and you could
You were
judge
off
like the rev
doing
matching of
pictures
the
with
driver.
Dickie was off doing photos with Aston and was on his way back in the Ferrari, and I think I was stood next to you, and we heard it on the breeze, and we both sort of, our ears pricked up, and we just sort of sat in silence listening to you come down through the gears. And
I
bit
love.
like that.
Sorry, John, carry on.
No, it's a bit like when you hear a Spitfire, a Merlin
Yeah.
or something.
Yeah.
Something special.
I
yeah.
love the bizarre interior though in the
Yes.
Ferrari. And
Yeah.
I think that's what I miss in modern Ferraris. They've got very they're still different to a McLaren, but it's quite conventional,
Clinical,
isn't it? And
yeah.
everything's in the obvious place.
Yeah.
Whereas there were all these funny cubbies, and the odometer and stuff was down sort of just in front of
controls
the gear lever. It's like, they're like, oh no, we forgot the. And then there was the mirror in the fold-out mirror in the glove box,
which didn't fit. It looked like I'd made it.
But
like
again,
a DT project.
it had that really low scuttle, didn't it? So it was like a scaled up MR2 in the architecture of the interior, which gives it a real sense of space.
Yeah, the
somehow.
view ahead. It feels like you're sort of out over the front
Well,
wheels.
I drove up in the Quattro in the dark. Couldn't find anything because nothing's lit up at night. And it's the same.
Even the electric window switches are the wrong way round.
Yeah.
You push them forwards to drop them and back to
And the
thought it was
Peugeot, they
broken
were
at
both
first.
different. One was like is that original as well?
Oh, it's very French.
No, that's like, well, you could come in either way. It went in the wrong way.
Yeah.
But and I don't know if the radio worked in the Quattro.
Yes.
But I did manage to find the slot for cassette tape to go.
Yeah.
And I was listening to David Bowie, Let's
Nice.
Dance album.
Yeah.
And it felt perfect. It was
Yeah.
right back in the 80s,
Yeah.
which was a good time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you guys drove a lot of these cars in period, tested them against other stuff, I imagine, as well. Were
Well-
these genuinely the highlights of that era, do you think? Did they always come out on top?
Well, perhaps the MR2 was overshadowed by AE86 at the time, but these were all hot cars. And we were chatting before we got going, trying to find Performance Car Magazine Car of the Year 1991, which was the first one, because both an M3 and a Quattro were in it. And
Right.
I know what we all think of the two cars from the test we've just done,
Yeah.
but the Quattro 20 valve won that first Car of the Year. But that was Clarkson's idea, Mr. Jeremy Clarkson. So we should all pick a car and we'll go and drive each other's cars and have
And
a
mine
debate.
will win.
Yeah, he did choose the Audi Quattro 25,
Right.
and basically it was done. I mean, we go away for a week these days, don't we, to get the photography and the. This was done in a wet day in
With a long
December,
lunch.
in December at Bruntingthorpe.
Oh no.
So we just drove around Bruntingthorpe for a bit,
Yeah.
and then had an argument and crowned the Quattro the winner. But that test also included, if you know any of the personalities, everybody was picking cars to type. Peter Tomlin was there, he chose TVR.
Great.
Kevin Blick chose a Lotus. Brian Laban chose an Alpha SZ,
Yeah.
which is, if I remember, was such a sought after car because this was on the bubble.
Yeah, everything
They
was
were-
going nuts, wasn't it,
I
then?
think Alpha were charging 45 quid a mile to drive it.
No way.
What?
Yeah,
Really? It's like
yeah,
a paper.
yeah, I
no wonder you
remember
just
that.
went to Bruntingthorpe
Well,
for
don't
half
tell
an
press
hour then.
offices that now.
That was outrageous.
That's probably why we went to Bruntingthorpe. I chose a V8 rear drive car, which is an SL500. And Jeff Dan, our technical editor, as was when we started, rest his soul, chose a Land Rover Discovery.
Right.
Was a V8,
It was
wasn't
a
it?
V8,
But
yeah. And he predicted...
he was
the
always quite
rise.
prescient, though, wasn't he? So that was his sort of proto SUV,
Yeah.
I suppose, wasn't it, really?
So yeah, the M3 obviously should have won because
Yeah.
it was brilliant. I've driven that car quite a few times,
Right.
and you always start off, the engine's ordinary, and no charisma whatsoever, just pootling around, and the chassis is not really doing much. Then a little bit like the 911, you start to show it a few corners.
It all
and he's
comes
like,
alive.
oh, hello.
Yeah.
So let's just push it a bit
Yeah,
more and
yeah.
a bit more.
Yeah.
And it's so well balanced.
Mm,
Yeah.
it's a lovely
So
car.
well damped.
The suspension's amazing because the bumps on that bit, it soaks them
Yeah.
up. so
But it's a really taut car, isn't it? It's not.
Yeah.
It's probably one of the flatter of the
Yeah.
cars.
It was
we've
very
had there,
connected and
cornering-wise.
grippy, wasn't it? And pointy.
Yeah.
Almost. Yeah.
Definitely the most modern feeling of all
Yeah, I
the
think
cars.
so.
And let's face it, everybody followed the German way.
Yeah.
French cars became less French, didn't they?
Yeah. Yeah.
They do have a quality like the Porsche. You can see, why that car's done 500,000 miles or something, and it was clearly built to do that.
Yeah.
Which, so therefore you can see why manufacturers have taken that level of value out of the car because there's so much headroom. You know, if you can drive a car for 500,000 miles, clearly you're putting a bit too much into it, aren't you?
Planned obsolescence.
That's what Mercedes did, wasn't it?
Yeah, but you can feel that in everything now, can't you? Like a modern Porsches are great cars, but they don't have, just like modern Mercedes are great cars, but they don't, and BMW, they don't have that solidity and that
longevity.
Everything feels like it's all been made from one piece somehow.
But yeah, it's not just Ferrari that places switchgear and dials in the strange places, because there's some weird buttons on the dashboard of the Porsche.
Yeah, well, there's the funny little organ
I couldn't
stops.
figure it out at all.
But then there'll be like a rear wiper button, which I don't think I ever found. And all the additions, because it had optional aircon, so you've got some other rotary controls, but you had 3 different sets of HVAC control, and I don't know whether any of them overrode the other, or whether they were all like singing along together.
Like trying to get a hotel shower to set just the right temperature.
It felt like you could have the aircon trying to cool the heater down and not know that you've got a heater on at the same time. I gave up on the way there.
I just sort of shivered my way across Yorkshire. Didn't matter. I was enjoying the car.
Harry knows these things because Harry's got that generation of 911s, isn't he? And he said, "Oh yeah, the one on the right, it's an independent wiper button. It's just for the delay." So there's one.
Okay,
I said,
right.
"Well, what's the one on the left?" There's another tiny button, in between the dials, which looks like a speech bubble. He said, "Oh yeah, that's to change over the electric mirror."
Right.
So you need to know.
Yeah, exactly.
But if you've driven
if
you've driven it hundreds of thousands of miles, you'd know exactly where everything is.
I think what we said earlier, wind noise, ergonomics.
Yeah,
durability, like all this was kind of everyone knocks the Nürburgring, don't they, for being a total waste of time because everyone's obsessed with lap time. But I think that's why you can drive the wheels off stuff now, and pretty much it'll feel exactly the same afterwards as it did before. Whereas I think all of the cars that we had, possible exception of the M3 and the 911, but the others I think would feel somewhat the worse for wear afterwards.
It's tiny wheels mean tiny brakes, don't they?
Yeah.
So you are limited. All of the cars had flow, didn't they? You could get into a flow with all of them, and I think that's partly because the ride's not shuddering. The ride's really good, and you're not gaining enough speed to need to stand them on their nose at the end of the straight, are you? The sort of delta between your peak speed and your corner speed is not not that high.
You're just carrying momentum the whole time, and I think when you drive them like that, you don't really expose the weaknesses of their precision or lack of precision.
That's right.
Because you're just flowing down and you're not really leaning on the car and wanting it to give you that last bit of grip.
Yeah, tucking into tight corners and powering out.
Exactly. Do you think that was the golden era of performance cars, or do you think a little bit later?
We're going to find out, aren't we? That's what I was thinking.
I don't want to prejudge anything, guys, but I've also driven the other ones.
Spoiler alert, we've driven all of them. I suspect the 90s cars will have enough of the good bits of the 80s cars, but deliver you that little bit more straight line performance.
Being a bit tighter and a bit quicker.
So they'll feel maybe a bit more exciting. And you can be a little bit more aggressive with them because they've got a little bit more grip. But so we haven't gone over the hump yet, or the sort of
the
intersection between the sort of fun and speed thing that we always talk about.
Yeah.
But the 80s cars was a definite reminder that we have overshot by a million miles really with the stuff that we drive now, and what you actually get. What's the benefit of it in enjoyment terms?
They should still have a 911 like the one we had at the factory, so that people can go and drive
as a reminder,
because everything about it was peak 911, wasn't it? And it was gorgeous.
It really was.
You saw it feels like car of the year 1987. I said, the 911's going to win again, isn't it? How to upset all the readers, give the result away now.
I think
it's the 911.
It's a hard one though, isn't it? I wouldn't not want to drive a modern, like a GT3 or GT3 RS or something. They're incredible things, aren't they? The engine is nuts, and the chassis and the aero and the sophistication of them is a totally different driving experience. But there aren't many cars like that now, are there? I don't think across the board with all the kind of Evo cars that we would have written about in the 80s. I think the standard of those, in terms of fun at least, would have been higher, I think.
And when modern cars do come out that have that kind of feel of everything in balance, not too much power, not too much grip. We love them. I mean, MX-5,
they really stand out.
GR86,
Yeah,
they're always so refreshing to drive.
The MR2 that we had and the current MX-5, same experience.
Yeah.
Same experience.
Very delicate, lots of roll, not too much power. Yeah.
But all cohesive.
Yeah.
All nicely blended and into a really satisfying car.
Sprang to my mind as well. The E30 just gone. The MX-5 was such a giant killer, and then the MR2 was on this test as well. It was always in the conversation.
It's the unexpected car.
So we need to go back. Is basically the verdict.
And we will. We'll be doing 90s next. But the 80s has set the bar.
If we keep going back, you won't be here.
Yeah, exactly.
You're fading. Where's Yousuf?
It's like the Avengers, isn't it? When it just like turn to dust. Yeah.
But you'll get more vivid the more modern it gets.
If we go back to the future.
It'll
start to fade.
Hand starts disappearing.
Do you think there's any... We're sort of struggling, aren't we, with 90s, because there's lots of cars we could include and we need to try and keep it manageable. But whether there's anything we missed from the 80s bunch that would have been... I mean, you could have like a Caterham or something from any era.
That's
the one thing that hasn't really changed at all. But it's almost like that rules itself out because it's just
it
this
doesn't represent a particular age,
anomalous car in any age, isn't it?
Because we wanted the cars to be relatively not mainstream. That's the wrong term, but we didn't want anything too rare groove and too kind of because you could have an F40 or something, but it would be too sort of
I think we want to try
extreme.
And avoid either the obvious ones. So next decade, I won't tell you all the cars, but we're trying to get a Clio 16 valve rather than a Clio Williams because we've written about Clio Williams lots, and the 16 valve kind of got overshadowed. But actually, it'd be fun to see what that car's like. 'Cause it's a bit more attainable. You could have had like a 928 or something in there, couldn't you?
Yeah,
for the
car of the year as well.
80s,
70s,
just to up the Porsche quotient.
It was very interesting because in the car park there was a big brand new Porsche SUV.
Yes.
And it had exactly the same badge as the Carrera.
Right.
But 2 feet higher. And on this huge
22-inch wheel,
23s, weren't they?
Something like that,
slab of a car. You think, gosh, that's progress.
Yeah, exactly.
It certainly isn't.
I think that's probably a good place to end. And I think the feature will be out probably in the issue that's on sale or soon to be on sale. Thanks for listening, guys, and catch you on the next one.
Don't forget the track days.
The track days, yes. I'll have to have a look at the link again. I've forgotten it. One second.
Come on, Yousuf.
Track days.
Bring back Stu, eh?
Stu will be back on the next one. Trackdays.evo.co.uk if you want to book one of those. So it's 6 across the year, isn't it?
Start in May, end in September.
Cool.
Bedford, Brands Hatch, Donington and
Goodwood.
Yeah.
If you want to bring your MR2 along, you'll have a whale of a time.
That's it. Cool. Well, thanks for listening, guys.
Everyone.
Catch you on the next one.
Cheers.